Welcome to Real Life and Politics. We are talking to Professor Winnie Mutula of the University of Nairobi, IDS Department. Professor, can you please tell us, how do you see the situation in Kenya, the social situation?
Thank you very much, Henry, of Real Life and Politics. It's complex to talk about the situation, and I hope you mean political situation. Is that what you mean?
That's what I mean, yes.
Yes, the political situation as it is now, I think it's still what I would call a muddy context. And a muddy context is where people are still getting their feet right, trying to get the alliances, trying to get their parties. You know, there are a number of citizens, even as we sit now, who are still to know which party they belong to, although the regulations are requiring that people be in parties, and even nominations will be done based on, signing to parties. But there are very many people still who are not signed into any party. Maybe they are still in a parties that either registered them with their knowledge or without their knowledge some years back. So we really in a muddy situation where we have to sort ourselves in the next few weeks, so that when the party files are closed and people are ready to go for nominations, citizens have registered into parties. There is a clean party list from which the parties can use as a register for nominations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Over the years, we have had this situation whereby during every election, we have new parties cropping up, old friends breaking apart. I think this is what we call the culture of deception in Kenya. What do you think about this? Do you think this is good for the country?
I would call it, the politics of political parties in Africa and in Kenya. I wouldn't call it deception per se, because I guess each and every person who either leaves a party or creates a new party has their own logic. Probably what we don't know is their logic of creating those parties. Sometimes people argue about these parties do not have ideology. And the concept of ideology is also very loose. So you could have an ideology which is, quote unquote, not the grand type of ideology that people ascribe to. But even if your party, if you are having a party because of your ethnic group, that could be your ideology, right or wrong, but that's your ideology, that's your principle. That you think if you bring your group together, that becomes something that you can rely on. Because it's all about what you can rely on and what you think you can use as a stepping stone, or rather as a ladder, to get the bigger picture. Because political party, really the ultimate of any political party is to take government. I think some of the parties merely want to build capital. They build capital, and that's why many times you see that a party is ready to sell itself to another party sometimes, or just to fizzle out and jump into another one. So if your conceptualization of a political party is to leverage your power and ability as attraction, then the other party can have you in.
Kenya is among the poorest countries in the world. I mean, if you have been to other countries, and now you find that in Kenya we have some of the biggest projects. You saw the Nairobi Expressway. We have SGR much earlier, and other major projects. Now we have our debt is almost 10 trillion. What would you say about the social situation with this kind of situation?
Yes, I know there are a lot of questions about, in particular, infrastructure, development of infrastructure, which is really it's not a Kenya problem. The entire Africa, I think this was a very well conceptualized thing by the AU, that Africa really needs to concentrate on infrastructure. I think the question that we need to be keen on is more of what do we prioritize in infrastructure, because infrastructure is massive. Roads is just one of them. A lot of us, when we talk about infrastructure, we think more of road. But even if we just think of the water system, even the electricity system, health system, there is so much infrastructure, but the most glaring and the most seen and the most competed is roads. And then when we come to roads now, we want to look at what are we prioritizing, even in road transport, which is the most glaring and people can debate and every citizen can talk about. And you look at Kenya, for example, you want to ask, is going the highways the right way, the big highways that cost more? And now we have even upped our game we are into expressway. So the issue is, should we have gone for the expressway, or should we have gone for the BRT, the bus rapid transit? That was the red lines, if you ever heard of the red lines on Thika Highway. And of course, some of us who do infrastructure and research in this area were saying, well, that's not BRT, it's a pseudo BRT. Because the way BRT is done, it takes massive investment. But also we were saying that you have to start somewhere, having a dedicated line. So we saw the red line, the BRT thing, more as a dedicated lane for public transit, mass transit means. Then came the railway and the light rail and all that. So basically, I don't think Africa or Kenya is wrong per se to invest into infrastructure, heavy investment in infrastructure. But I think the issue is at the level of what do you prioritize? Do you pick the expressway that goes all the way to end of Waiyaki, or do you concentrate on BRT first? But now you see the expressway has come before the BRT. But you would definitely say that the BRT would have benefited more people if you are looking for numbers.
They are just finishing it off on Thika Road. I mean, they are just finishing the...
Yeah, but the one that is running fast is the expressway.
Yes, yes.
And we were told March it should be ready. We started seeing the expressway before. The BRT red was drawn almost 3-4 years ago.
Yes.
The idea to go the BRT was before we really had expressway in the public media. Yeah. So the question again there, I'm just
and then rubbed off.
Yes, I'm just trying to highlight the issue of prioritization. And if you dig deeper into the political settlements that go into that, there must be a reason which is internal that somebody like you can dig deep and find out why did we then go fast for the expressway and not for the bus rapid transit, which would have served more people than this paid up express highway that is going to serve people, yes, but is an exclusive thing because it's where you will go if you can afford. Yeah.
Between President Uhuru and his deputy, William Ruto, how do you see it from your angle?
Well, it's a conflict that was bound to be there. If two people get together and agree to work together, and the details of how they ended up not feeling they can work together is not something I'm very privy to. But the moment you reach a point where two who have partnered together feel they can't work together, you are likely to see tension. But I did not expect the kind of tensions that I've seen. I expected mild tension, not the tension that can see one creating another party right in the middle of being in another party. That I didn't expect. But this is very normal with Kenya in that alliances come and go. People gel at one phase with one person or one party, and they can change game and get to another. But it happening in the middle of governance was indeed a problem, even to Kenya, because then we have seen more politics than development. You can imagine if Ruto and Uhuru were just working together, trying to move all these issues, our development, Big Four agenda together, the way they were in 2013. Definitely, I'm sure we would have seen more development. We have development, yes, but we would have seen a higher, accelerated development than what we have seen from 2017 to now as we go to the elections in August. We would have seen close to what we saw with Kibaki and Raila, Mkate Nusu thing. The Mkate Nusu thing pushed us also in terms of conceptualizing projects. A lot of things we see today of infrastructure were conceptualized in that regime. So the realization we are seeing in the regime of Ruto in 2013, and then a little bit of fractures in 2017, but again, the fact that the opposition was moribund at that point, especially after the handshake, then you now see again Uhuru having his way. I can imagine if Ruto was pulling out and the opposition was also on the back of the state, very little would have happened. Almost nothing. If there was, of course, people argue that the pullout is because of the handshake. These are like the three things in one. that if there was no handshake, probably Ruto would not have walked off. But I don't think that's quite right, because I also see that Ruto's also, if I see how Ruto has moved on, he has his own goals for power. Coming all the way from KANU youth for KANU 1992, and being in politics all the way and scaling it up to a deputy VC, the deputy president.
How would we avoid such a situation developing in future? Because I think for the last, from 2018, we have had a very difficult situation in Kenya, where the two top executives don't see eye to eye. That is after the handshake. How would the country avoid such a situation in future?
I don't even want to think so much of how we avoid it. We just have bad manners in this country. Because really, there is provision. Our legal provisions provide for exits if things don't work. Just the way if we don't like our governor or we don't like our MP or any of the elected leaders, we have legal provisions for exit. But the manners we have seem not to let us to exit. I would have expected, for example, the deputy president to have just exited, you know, in a very humility approach, take humility and just exit and either resign or, you know, just say, I want to build another party for the 2022 elections. And that's my reason for resignation.
Boosted him in the campaign.
It would have boosted a lot.
You'd be much better off.
Much better off by just saying, well, I think I want to build a party because after having been a VP, you know, for 2 terms, where else can I go? I love politics. I want to now build something that takes me to the next level. Because I feel that this Jubilee where I am is not giving me the platform, you know, to do it right. That would have been very honorable. But very few Africans are ready to resign and take hard options like that one. So here is a case where you want to eat both sides of the cake. Yeah, because you are still the DP. Everybody else around you knows you are the DP, and you are legally, because we don't have another DP. And I don't know, maybe we'll have to look at the law and the legal provisions. You know, this thing of you are conjoined when you win as a team. The way Uhuru and Ruto is very gray in terms of legal provisions. There are people who have argued that there is no way the Kenyatta regime can be complete without Ruto. So maybe that's a gray area for our politics, which we may need to look at, because we will still have deputies on board. And if we are likely to have another lot of a deputy being that way, it is problematic to the country. We need 2 of our leaders working together to the end of the elections. At worst, they can break maybe when we are a few months to elections, of maybe tensions, of maybe the incumbent is not supporting his deputy to take seat. That I would understand. But this one of 3 years down the line before the next election, and you are not working together, is a very rare case. We've had it, but it's a rare case. We need him, even as we talk now, we need him to be in the team of the president, because that's really how governance works. That governance works with those 2 being at the top, and all other institutions of governance, in particular those embedded in the constitution, operating right.
There's this new party coalition law, or the new one that was passed in Parliament and signed by the president. How do you see? Do you think it could turn out to be a disappointment to the other parties?
It is a good law generally, because usually when there is a review of law or a new law, you ask, what is it curing? And this particular revision or amendments are curing, I think, particularly 2 things. One is about coalitions and how coalitions behave. If you look at in the past, having a coalition was more of a gentlewoman's agreement. But now what it is saying, it will no longer be a gentlewoman's agreement. It will be an agreement where it's embedded first in your political party. You embed it in your political party, and even when you walk out to go into a coalition, you go as corporate. So that corporate provision, which was never operationalized in the previous 2011 Political Parties Act, is now operationalized with this amendment, in that first it has to be in your constitution as a party. And then when you want to join another one as a coalition, you will still remain a party. But those provisions or how you join must be in an agreement that must then be launched with the political party's entity. Then again, it talks about primaries, how you do primaries. Before, our primaries have been sham. They've been sham. And even if you ask Kenyans, how many of you have ever gone to vote in primaries? I think if you get a 20% per party, you will be a lucky person. It's hardly, people don't even know that that's something that occurs. People only know the actual voting time. Yes. So whatever list they've been using to do primaries, nobody knows. Nobody knows for sure. Because right now, you will have the list from the registrar of political parties. That is the list that, those are the names that will vote. Those ones registered by the political parties. So right now as we talk, parties have to really do a lot of work in terms of making sure they have registered members. So
they have to hand over that list to
completely.
them. Yes.
And the list comes from the registrar, not from them. The list of those who participate in primaries come from the register, not from them. So if there is a way, and maybe there is no way, of auditing who voted, it will be very easy to audit. But that's another story for another day, whether they will be doing the right thing. Because in Kenya, you can have very good laws, but the practice will be totally different. Yes. Yeah, so I can't talk much about that. And then it also allows parties to use a delegates approach. In other words, I don't have to go to vote for the person to represent me to be nominated, but the party itself can decide on a delegate system where it appoints some delegates from the regions or from that area, and it is those delegates that vote for the person to be nominated. Because sometimes the delegate thing can also be very brash, if you know. The delegate thing can be very brash. Who is it that they take? Who elects a delegate? How representative is the delegate that is now going to have you as the governor of a particular, as a nominee? We usually see it as a kitchen thing. Most people see it as a kitchen cabinet thing when they hear that you've been nominated direct. You know, the direct nomination. The indirect nomination, where a party says, okay, we are sealing this. This particular candidate will not go through the primaries of open nomination. But actually, when you look at it in detail, in the past, we've not been knowing whether it's a one person nominating you or whether it's an organ of the political party nominating you.
Do you think the country needs two chambers of parliament? We have a situation whereby a law is passed in the lower house, and then it goes to the Senate. You even wonder why should it go and these two chambers are costing a lot of money. Do you think the country needs two chambers at the same time?
Thank you. I wouldn't start by asking whether the country needs them or not. I will start by reflecting on why are there two chambers. The two chambers was conceptualized under the structure of governance. In that we had 47 counties and we had the national government. And I was lucky to sit in the task force that structured the county government, the 9 months commission. I sat in it. And we were very clear when we were structuring the county governments that the county governments will need somebody to stand in for them, somebody to deal with their issues, help them at that top level. And that was the Senate. So that was how Senate was conceptualized. Senate is really meant to oversee and support the county governments, because we also know how national governments, now that we move from central, work, in that you can lose your devolution anytime. You can lose it. It can be usurped by the national government. Yes. So now if you have the house that its whole responsibility is to protect the devolved system of government, in particular the 47 counties, we can, once we understand why it was conceptualized, then we can ask other questions. Like now, when you ask whether we need them, in that context, I will tell you, yes, we need the two chambers. How they should be structured, whether they cost money, that then becomes the discussion that we should never close at any one time. And again, 10 years down the line with a devolved system of governance is also high time. I think it's high time. People even said that we cannot review the constitution. I don't belong to that school of thought. I belong to the school of thought that follows the Constitution, that says after this particular moment you can review. You know, there is a time span when you can review a constitution. There is nothing to stop us from reviewing a constitution. So as much as I argue that I think that two chambers are justified, when I see how they were conceptualized, I also can stand back today and say we can look again and see the weaknesses. We must have something we are curing, even if we want to now, for example, say we no longer need the second house, the Senate. We have to explain why we think we don't need it and what we would be solving or addressing if we were to remove it.
Okay. The burden on the taxpayer is very big. Now, you are going to have more MPs if the BBI is passed in future. Do you think the country can sustain this high-level expenditure plus our other projects? We need to build roads, schools, hospitals.
I think I quite agree that our governance is top-heavy, is heavy. It is heavy, it is quite a burden. And again, you look at it in where we are coming from and why we must also reach a point when you stop. For example, if you see the issue of women's rep, this was an affirmative action. Women's rep is an affirmative action. And affirmative actions are not supposed to last forever. They are like bridging a situation. Once you bridge the situation, you shift game. Yeah. It's just the way we put the equalization fund. The equalization fund is expected to last for 20 years. After 20 years, we have to reboot it or restructure it or just remove it. Because the conceptualization was that within that period, we shall have bridged the inequalities that exist in the country. You have to win it as you go along. In other words, we go back again to the Constitution, as people may want to say that you cannot touch the Constitution. We have to keep touching the Constitution, because for now, that is what the Constitution provides. But we are saying 10 years down the line, we've seen the women reps, we've seen the senators, we've seen the MPs, we've seen the president and his deputy, and the whole paraphernalia, including the commissions. How well are they serving us? Should we re-examine? Do some just need not to be there? Or should they be reorganized in a particular way? Look at the issues we face at constituency level. Just look at the issues we face. Everybody wants their own money. I have no idea why. The women rep wants their own money to take down there. The MP wants their own money to take down there. We have already taken the money to the county, you know. The senator wants his own money. They have not pushed so much. Senators don't push much. The ones who have pushed much are the MP and the women's rep. They pushed much. The women rep got something. It's not much, but they have something now, kidogo. They are doing few things like markets and all that across the country. So if we were to really rethink our governance, we will be asking, can the county government and the team we put there, MCAs and the executives that manage that pool, can they manage these counties and we give them all the money to deal with all those things? I think that's the question. I don't have an answer, but it's something we need to look at. And when we look at it, we must look at the Constitution.
The BBI process, do you think it should be revived, according to you?
It's not even a matter of being revived. The Constitution has to be re-examined. In all this discussion we're having now, we need to re-examine the Constitution. Parts of it that can be realigned. You will definitely, it will, at one point, the BBI debate will be reopened, because it's all about what is it that we need to re-examine. And most of the discussion we are having now is about re-examining and weighing, including weighing what is manageable for the nation. Like, for example, if you look at our representation, our representatives, whether it's governor, whether it's MP, whether it's women's rep, all these representatives, even that we can look. We can look again soberly as Kenyans and see whether we are overrepresented. Because if you look at the surveys, and we even just released a survey on Tuesday, Afrobarometer surveys, if you do monitor Afrobarometer, we released a survey. It's very clear that people don't value this many representatives. You should see where all these, big offices of representation, they are lying at the bottom. People trust religious leaders, number one, issue of trust. There is an issue of trust which has been asked for over the years. But this year around, last year's survey, we did put military. Not that we've never had military, but because we saw the military coming into politics, we put them in. That survey, you have religious leaders, because trust is very critical in terms of governance. Who do you trust most? Religious leaders is number one. And this last year's survey, military is number two. It shows you how the organs we have been talking about are at the bottom. Their trust is uko chini kabisa. Their trust, nobody trusts them. I think the president was a little bit up. I think it was 45 or 50 there, a little bit up. Yeah, but the rest, whether
Number
it's governor,
45.
county,
Yes.
yeah, the level, there is the midway, the 50, and if you are falling below average, if your trust is below average, I think the president was like average there, yeah, somewhere. We ask a lot of things. We even ask the political, whether people are close to a political party. Is there a party you feel close to? There is also that question. But the constitution has to be re-examined, because even citizens are not feeling that those offices are serving them. This is, I think, the dilemma that we have. We have done so much with the new constitution 2010 that we put so many commissions, we put so many governance frameworks and systems, but the public are still not feeling like we are going the right direction.
Now, just to conclude, what kind of climax would you like to see for the country, given the situation we are in right now?
I think the climax I would want to see, first and foremost, is citizens getting out and voting wisely. If people can vote wisely and not so much tied to parochial, you know, we've had enough taste of devolution. We've seen the 10 years and know people who can serve. But the unfortunate thing, contrary to my expectation, I always thought that the ones who should front themselves as presidents are governors. And the way I'm looking at it, there are very few governors that are fronting themselves. Because going forward, my expectation would be that we look at some governors who are performing very well in their counties. Yes. And these are the people we emulate, go up there and do the same thing for the nation.
Office, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And yet, I'm not seeing that. So that is also a bit worrying, because the crop that we should have for the presidency and deputy president should be from the governors. And I don't even think we are approximating that even as we go forward. You might even find there will be no governor who is the deputy president. They are the ones who should be. Yeah, but here I don't know the lenses we are using. I think we have very different lens here. So you might find a president just coming from maybe some business person coming to be president. We have a loop-sided thing, because if you demonstrate your governance capacities in a county, we should give you a chance to replicate it up into the national outlook. Can you now do what you did for a county at a national level? Yeah, they have a potential to be president.
Thank you very much. I hope we can do it again. I think it was very nice. And
thank you very much.
Yes.
Yeah,
I think another discussion.
A good discussion, a very good discussion.
National issues. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Karibu sana.